Good afternoon. How are you today? You seem really lively. Okay. Well, welcome to the second faculty, staff, and community session of the Higher Education Speaker Series. I'm Elena Hefner, the Director of Career Services, and I'm going to be your MC today. I see a lot of leadership, community, and Tarleton leadership in the room, so thank you so much for being here. You had many requests for community for your time, so thank you. Appreciate that. We have a silent audience that is logging in at the moment in Zoom, and we have provided all satellite locations in Waco, Fort Worth, and Midlothian the ability to type in as well. And Catherine will be our moderator to bring in any questions they may have as well. So with that, as a little housekeeping, as Mr. Froeschle is presenting, he's going to take questions throughout. And for you here in Stephenville, it's imperative, timely imperative, that you use the microphone to vocalize your question, because number one, we have an online audience. Number two, the session is being recorded, so chances are high, if you have the question, somebody else has that same question. That answer can be very fruitful in the future. So it'll just take an awkward second for you to stand up and flag somebody who either is holding the mic or if nobody's holding the mic to come down to the mics. Sound good? Like, yay, we can move. All right, so the transition is that the speaker series is designed to tease out the commonalities between higher education and workforce needs, and there are many. No matter which entity you work in, it is safe to conclude that a bachelor's degree is indeed very valuable on a personal level and in the workforce. Today, Mr. Froeschle is going to present the intersection between educational alignment and workforce needs. In this session, Rich will talk to us about the growing interest and resolve by governments and educational institutions to better align program offerings and curriculum content with the knowledge and skills most in demand by the business community. The path to alignment is complicated and has a host of issues, some of which will be mentioned today. So this session touches on a few of those topics, which may hit close to home for some, but it's in an effort to offer a roadmap for alignment. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Garza, who is going to present Mr. Froeschle. Dr. Garza, as you know, is the Vice President of Enrollment Management. He oversees a whole host of departments on campus, and I won't bore you with that. He supervises me, and so I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Garza.
Hello, thank you. So we had a great session at lunch where Mr. Froeschle was able to engage students, and so I think this is going to be a little bit of a different presentation targeting the audience, so I'm looking forward to it. Mr. Froeschle is a labor market economist and an expert on a wide array of topics relating to the Texas economy and workforce and education programs. He's the former director of the Labor Market and Career Information Department of the Texas Workforce Commission. He's also served as director of the Texas State Occupational Information Coordinating Committee and as a labor economist with the Texas Department of Community Affairs. Prior to his work with the Texas state government, Mr. Froeschle conducted in-service training with the National Labor Market Information Training Institute at the University of North Texas in the areas of strategic planning and regional economic analysis for state and federal employment and training programs. His writings include 5 books, a dozen monographs, many related essays and briefs, all focused on the application of labor market and career information and education policy, workforce planning, and economic development. His professional specialties and interests are in the fields of regional economic analysis, labor market dynamics, skill and job analysis, and the development and interpretation of labor market information, all of which have occupied his career for the past 40 years. So with great pleasure, we bring you Mr. Richard Froeschle.
Hi guys, good afternoon. How's everybody? I'm a regional economist by training, so over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to demonstrate my perceptual blindness by looking at the world from a labor market perspective. So while I'm a product of higher education as it was, what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is sort of envisioning a world where there is increased alignment between program offerings and program content and what's going on in the labor market. Let me first say that everybody put their tomatoes away. I have no cabbage heads or any of that kind of stuff. All right? We're just going to have a conversation because I got no dog in this hunt. But what I am going to do is talk a little bit about how the labor market is changing. And for those that are interested in saying, you know what, as the labor market changes and the skill needs change, the employer community changes, do we need to think about, at least in some of our programs, making them or assuring ourselves, and especially for the benefits of our students, that a lot of what we do is indeed aligned with what is being viewed as in demand by the employer community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about two things. And one is about the labor market as a whole and what we see. And then some aspects, actually three major points, of labor market alignment. So if you want to pursue a path of increased alignment with program offerings and program content to labor market demand, there's a whole host of things that one can do, but I'm going to talk about three major areas. One is the need to understand the regional labor market in which your students will be living and functioning. Two, the ability to have a shared and common language. And this becomes important. Most of you at the faculty level have syllabi and lists of things that you want to accomplish as a part of whatever it is that you're teaching. But have they been broken down into learning objectives? And can those learning objectives be mapped to skills that are in demand in the occupational areas in which you're servicing, and looking at the degree to which there's alignment between the learning objectives and the skills? We'll talk about that. So that's what we call a shared and common language. And then the third aspect is the alignment process, is what one does to put those things together. So I'm going to toss out some things to give you to get you thinking about. Maybe something you hadn't thought about today. I'm more than welcome. One, every slide I'm going to use today is available. I'm not going to give them to Alana, but I'm happy to send them to anybody that's interested in yours to use, beat up, whatever you want to do with them. The other part is that because this is just a small group, even though is this echoing to you, or is it just me? Kind of echoey? Because it's a small group, we're really facilitating conversation. I mean, and that's really what it is. If you have a question, you go, wait a second, that's a bunch of crap. Then I'm not looking at you, sir, in particular, all right? You want to have that conversation, let's just do it. That's all we're doing. We're just opening up subject matter to be able to say, hey, let's think about the world in a slightly different way and see what works for us. Are we good with that? Okay. I thought I heard consensus. Yes? Yes. All right. That's what I like, 2 thumbs up. Actually, I was in a session not too long ago, for those of you that are faculty, where the presenter, who was a former teacher, said, everybody with me? And nobody said anything. And then the faculty said, knock on your tables if everybody's with you. And all of a sudden, you hear this. Anybody do this? Okay, so for the whole rest of the session, this guy was on for about an hour. He'd say, okay, everybody with me, knock on your tables. And then by about 3/4 of the way through, it was, and then after everybody's with him, and he was really good. He was talking about social and economic learning and the importance of that. But I think people just got tired of this in the process. Never seen it. Okay, here we go. So, macroeconomics first, real quick. Almost every macroeconomic measure, when we look at the larger economy as a whole, are some very positive signs. Consumer sentiment, how we feel about the economy, has been rising significantly. Personal per capita income has been rising significantly. The quit rate has been rising significantly. From a labor market standpoint, we really care about this because if you quit your job, it usually means that you think that you can get another job. It's a very strong indicator of labor market health and the like. And then UI claims activity. UI claims, initial claims, and continued claims are both. So these 4 and a bunch of them show that the economy as a whole, from macro standpoint, is doing very well. But why do you care? Well, it just means that all of your students are going to get jobs when they leave. Right? So getting a job in an economy where the unemployment rate is 2.5% is not necessarily a success. Something about 65% of all students are already working while they're in school to begin with. They're already, because they're admitted to the university, they're already the creme de la creme of the student age population. So they will all get jobs. Our challenge is to be able to say, 1, can you help this student achieve their passions, what we talked about in the previous session, achieve their passions, and to be able to get a job that allows them to not only achieve those passions, but earn a self-sustaining living. And the interesting thing that's not on this list is the emerging bifurcation of economics of earnings, right? So you've got a lot of people doing very well, right subjects or not, doing very well from an earnings standpoint, but you've got an awful lot of people that are down here on the low end, low wage side. And that increasing bifurcation of earnings, wealth, and earnings capacity is one of the biggest problems that this country faces. Pure economics. From a macro standpoint, we're looking good. Now, just in general, how many of you spend a lot of time talking with the business community or employers per se? Anybody spend a lot of time having that conversation? So in the state of Texas as a whole, we're talking about something like 20 of our labor market areas, all with unemployment rates below 3.5%. What that tells us is there's a lot of general labor shortages. From an employer standpoint, this is one of the reasons why. The blue line that you see here is the growth in Texas employment as a whole. You see it's been rising very quickly. The CLF, or the red line, is the growth in our civilian labor force. So you note that back here in 2010, the growth in the civilian labor force and the growth in job growth was right about the same. And then you see over the last 7 or 8 years, you see that increasing divergence going on here. That increasing divergence is, how many of you heard this conversation about there's a skill shortage or a skill gap, whatever that, however language and however you're defining that. This issue of not having enough workers to fill the available jobs. The labor force growth is not keeping up in Texas with the job growth. So the obvious answer to fix this problem is the unemployed. So you pull all those unemployed persons, 500,000 to 600,000 unemployed persons in the state, you pull them in to fill those available jobs. Well, a couple of challenges here. One is, you see that green line? What's the number of unemployed persons in the state of Texas? So as this gap between job growth or demand for job and the available civilian labor force, that gap keeps happening, the ability for the unemployed to walk into those jobs is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The most significant issue here, however, is that of those people that are unemployed now, we're at a point where, and this is a term we don't like to really talk about, but they are increasingly unemployable. They have multiple barriers to employment. So it's not just a body issue, it's not even a specific skill issue. The question becomes, will we and do we have the labor force to be able to fill that gap? And if we don't, what happens? Well, something has to change. Either the gap keeps growing, or in our case, job growth gets tempered. Now, I don't know whether any of you have seen lately Keith Phillips, he's an economist at the Dallas Fed. He has now changed his projection for Texas employment, which last year for 2019 was around 2.5%. He's now knocked it down to 1.9 or 2%. And the sole reason for his reforming that projection is a labor shortage-driven issue. Not enough workers to be able to execute all the full demands of the Texas economy. So that's kind of interesting. Now, I mentioned these low unemployment rates. This is the number of unemployed persons and all the online job postings that we see, and then the ratio of unemployed persons to job postings. Anything interesting about that blue line? This part that I like, so you can think about it, about the labor force. What do you have? Statewide, 1.3, all metropolitan areas, 1.2, but you've got areas like Midland and Odessa, you've got a half a person for every online job opening. And that's just bodies. We're not talking about specific skills. We're not even talking about soft skills or the ability to communicate and other kinds of employability skills. We're just talking about pure bodies. It's interesting, last night I was staying at the Hampton Inn, and I thought, gosh, on a Tuesday night in Stephenville, Hampton Inn, I'd have this place to myself. She said, the only room, when I checked in with a reservation, she said, the only room I have for you is on the first floor down here in the very front. I was going, is that it? She said, well, yeah, the hotel is full. I said, full? She thought, so yeah, it's been full for about the last 3 months or so. I go, well, that's really odd. Why is that? She says, we have group rates from FNC and 3 or 4 other oil and oil services related companies where those workers are going out in the OPEC and coming all the way back up here, commuting, right, on a regular basis. So that you wouldn't think that too much of this is still connected to oil and gas out here in the Stephenville area, but indeed, between agriculture and then this oil field labor movement, you're getting a lot of connectedness to that. All right. Here's the ratio of job postings to unemployed. That's sort of a broader occupational category. So when we start saying, well, what kind of groups of occupations do we see in demand relative to the available labor force? This is what some of those ratios look like. It's kind of interesting. Computer, mathematical, science-related occupations, 0.16. 0.16. All right, that's less than 2 people for every online job posting. But look at the average wage. Then come down to the bottom of this list, which is food prep and serving related, almost 3 people for every job posting. And look at the wage, talking about less than $12 an hour. So it's interesting if we just talk about saying where are the highest wages and where are the greatest gaps. It's interesting where we see computer mathematical occupations, healthcare practitioners and technical occupations, business, financial, and then management occupations, all the highest paid and the ones that are hardest to fill. Right? It's kind of interesting. Here's the other part. How many of you are baby boomers? Okay, bunch of baby boomers. How many love Bill say yourself a baby boomer? How many of you are appalled at being called a baby boomer? You know, I asked the millennials the same question, and millennials hate being called millennials. They just hate it, right? Here's the interesting thing. This chart right here, this is from the American Community Survey. This is from some micro homes data. Starting 2000 all the way to 2017, this is the generation side. So baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and the new Gen Z, or the iGen, whatever we call it. Notice that in 2007, baby boomers at 37% are now roughly 19% of the employment in the state of Texas. Whereas millennials, who used to be a little less than 23%, are now almost 39%. So what's really interesting is that we have a real challenge in front of us. Because as you see those baby boomers completely dropping off the employed labor force, and you see the millennials rushing in to fill that gap, the skills that they bring to the table to replace those that are leaving is a very significant issue related to skills shortage related issues we saw earlier. Now, this is always an interesting question. There are 2 things I want to talk about today. One is our mission statements, why does the university exist? And the second one is why do the students come? Right? So it's always kind of interesting. How many of you think students, most of the students that you know, that you have familiar with, how many of you think they come because they've been told to come? Their parents say that they have to come, you know, that they're told to be here. They don't really know why they're here, but they're told to be here. You got a bunch of those? How many of you think that they're here because they have a passion and a purpose, and they know that they come to Tarleton University to be able to fulfill that passion and purpose? How many? You got that many? What is that? Is that 2% out of 100%, or what is that gap there? That's a little gap. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so many of you have probably seen this. I was questioning some of the generalizability, but I'm going to do it anyway. The UCLA freshman survey about why kids go to college. So it's pretty interesting here when they ask why kids go to college. The number 1 response is to be able to get a better job. 85% to be able to get a better job. Right? And that's actually been growing over the last 15 years. And number 2 on that list, be able to make more money. It's declined just a little bit, but still 70%. So you'd think if you take them at their face value, and it is generalizable to us, why do kids come to college? Because they think they're going to what? Learn something that's going to make them more employable and be able to get a better living. Right? Now, if you're a little confused, here's what I think is particularly interesting. See this? After they get in, so UCLA asks those questions, now that you're here, what do you think is the most, what do you want to do while you're here? What are your goals while you're here? Number 1 on that list is being very well off financially. Number 1 response, up 80%, 81%. All right, so obviously, when you take all 3 of those things together, they're counting on us to teach them something important so that they get a good job and life will be good for them. Right? And so you think, what information should we provide them? What should they be studying? They should be studying those majors that do what? Earn the most money. Now that's not what they're doing, right? Matter of fact, they're patently not doing that. But here's the most important point for me. See this list here? These are the ones that have grown, changed between 2000 and 2015 about why they're here. See these are the percentages of what has grown the most. While they're here, they say, yeah, I'm going to college, make a lot of money and have a good job. But what's happening is once they get into college, they have a lot of different perspectives that are changing markedly, that are growing markedly. The ability to improve understanding of other cultures, help others who are difficult, keep political events, environmental programs, racial understanding, become a community leader. The only thing they're not emphasizing once they get here are these 2, raising a family and starting their own business, right? Which is slightly different world maybe than some of you and I went to college. So our question becomes, of these things, Is this why we're here? And how does this influence what we do and what we offer in college? Now, here's another survey. Kind of represents this disconnect. This is Teen Dreams. This is a percentage of students that say this is the occupational areas in which they're interested. And the other one that says that is Dream Gap is the difference between occupations, percentages next to them, is the percentage of workers that are in each one of those in the labor market. So number one, arts, design, media, 1% of all employed Americans are in that area. Healthcare practitioners, 6%, life, physical, social science, 1%, architecture, engineering, 2%. So the difference between where people are employed and what teens say they want to do is represented in that Dream Gap. Is there anything interesting on that chart that pops out to you? Now this shouldn't surprise anybody, all right? I don't know. I'm here because, right? So quarter of the students, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I think this is interesting. Arts, design, and media, it's only 1% of all Americans are employed in those occupations. Teens, 20%, right? That's wild. So for those of you that are in arts, media, creative arts, you must be thrilled about that. With one problem, and that is only 1% of the jobs are actually in that particular area. So when you start talking about the employment opportunities for your graduates, that's interesting. Here's another one that really gets me. You ask students, only 1% are going to be in sales and related occupations. When we start looking at what the labor market looks like, how many of our students in some way, shape, or form start in sales jobs? Minor sales, customer contact, up to major technical, non-technical sales. This gap right here is huge. It is huge, and that's a reality of the labor market. Here's one that slays me. Office and support. Ask your students, how many do you want to be in an office administrative environment? You go, oh, nobody. All right. Well, guess what? When you start looking at the labor market, about 15% of all of you will eventually be in here. So here's the follow-up to that. When you ask them about media culture, 20% of the teens desire jobs in these areas. These are the occupational areas that are coming to the table. Recognize any of these? All right, you should see a bunch of those. All right. Now, when they say they want to do any of these, and then they realize that the truth of the matter is only 1% of the labor market is, and by the way, that 1% is as much of the meritocracy in American economy as we get. In other words, those that are really good do really well. Most of them, not so much. So, interesting difference between what students say they want to do and what the labor market looks like. Now, for us, the $64,000 question is. By the way, anybody remember when the $64,000 question first came on? It's 1955, and it was a radio program. In 1950, actually, it was a radio program in 1947. Came on. It wasn't the $64,000 question. Remember what the number was? It was $6,000. The $6,000 question. Right? And then in 1955, it became the television show and became the $64,000 question. I know it's my age of birth, so when they say, hey, what was the most popular television show when you were born? There it is, $64,000. Now, I actually love that fact. Anyway, so here's the $64,000 question. How do we translate and balance economic and labor market trends, where the jobs are, where our students are going to end up, where they're going to be able to make a living, with student interests, what they say they want to do, which as we've seen may or may not align, and more importantly for us, or as important for us, that they get the core academic fundamentals that they need to be able to function, period. So, balance economic and labor market trends, student interest, and core academic fundamentals into a coherent strategy, educational strategy for student and worker preparation. $64,000 question. It's what we try to do every day without actually saying it. Think about it. Now, to me, it all starts in the mission statement. How many of you read your mission statement today? Yesterday? This week? Last week? Last week, okay, there we go. Align your curriculum or your thought or your teaching or your methodology or anything else with your mission statement. Okay, it's kind of interesting. We should get 3 mission statements, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. The first one is the mission of the University of Texas at Austin. All right, I did my undergraduate work there. We were talking earlier. Most of my classes were 300 and 400 students, taught by a lecturer. I didn't have a relationship in 4 years with a single faculty member. Is that the saddest thing you've ever heard? It was my reality in 1974, 4. Here's our, to achieve excellence, the university contributes to the advancement of society through research, creative activity, and scholarly inquiry. What is missing from the University of Texas mission statement? Student. The word student is missing completely. The University of Texas exists to do what? To maintain the University of Texas. We're not recording any of this, are we? Because I mean, never had another. Okay. So then let's look at Tarleton, all right, which I really like because I see the student to be the premier student-focused institution. You people care about your students, right? And it's in your mission statement. Committed to student success. Now, I know that they're going to demonstrate stability and integrity while contributing meaningfully and responsibly to a global society. I'm not really sure how they're going to do that, but by God, it sounds good. And I don't really care, as long as student success is in there someplace. Now, so we have this University of Texas mission. It's nothing about students. We got the Tarleton mission. It's got something about students, but doesn't really talk a lot about what we're really going to do to help those students. And now you've got the University of Phoenix, the fastest growing university, non-bricks and mortar university in the country, and their mission statement is develop knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their professional goals, right? Now notice the difference between the three mission statements. The last one, whether we like it or not, is the one that's growing the fastest, and it is designed mostly for non-traditional students to be able to acquire the skills that are directly necessary to achieve their lifelong passions, right? Most of the older students, they already kind of know what they want to do, and so the University of Phoenix is related to that. So just note the differences in the three, right? I like where you are. You're going to decide whether you want to be closer to the University of Texas or whether you want to be closer to the University of Phoenix. That's going to be your choice. So the goals of improved education, labor market alignment. How many of you read the new piece of legislation that's floating around things past the House? It's been referred to the Prosper Act, new Higher Ed Redesign Act. Anybody read it in the legislation? It's boring as hell, but there's all kinds of really interesting stuff in it. Not the least of which says the goal is to support students in completing an affordable post-secondary education that will prepare them to enter the workforce. No, prepare them to enter the workforce implies that what they learn will have labor market relevance to it. With the skills they need for lifelong success, right? Which means their first job is not the end. They're going to be building their own career progression, their own upward mobility, etc. And hopefully the skills that they get here will help them in that process. So what we're talking about with labor market alignment is four things. Facilitate and improve market relevant course learning. Doesn't everybody want to teach what matters? I mean, you don't want to teach random stuff. You want to teach stuff that you taught 50 years ago just because, right? You want to teach stuff that matters and hopefully matters relative to employability. Two, you want to enhance the reputation of your institution as one that's responsive to the business community. Wouldn't it be great when the employers that are within each of your respective service areas for each of your campuses said, you know what, that Tarleton is right at the top of my list of employer engagement. They are my go-to institution when I need to make sure that I've got students coming in the pipeline that are meeting my needs. And that you're the first place that they come to, right? That'd be interesting. Number three, improve recruiting and marketing by demonstrating positive student outcomes. You know, when you look at the geographic area around this 100-mile radius within this campus, you've got declining numbers, population in the 15 to 24 age cohort, right? So your campuses that are adding most of your new students are where? Not necessarily here. They are in your new Fort Worth campus, or even some in your Waco campus, right? They are closer to population growth centers. That shouldn't surprise you. Wouldn't it be great? Even for here, you'll say, come here because look at what has happened to the students that also have come here. Look at their successes, life successes, labor market successes. Be able to say, if you come here, your chance of being successful at the price that we're charging is a good deal for you. There's a return that's a value proposition. And then last but not least, trying to reduce that random walk between education, completion, and labor market system. Wouldn't it be great if a student at the end of their graduation point, rather than walking into the saying, hey student, do you have a passion? And even if you don't, let's make sure that you are working towards something so that rather than straight linear and a disconnect between career services related stuff and what's going on in the academic community, that's not a random walk, that there's a parallel track associated with that. The really good news about that is what happens at graduation, is that those students don't get dumped in the labor market going, now what? They have a plan, they have a focus, reducing that random walk. So here's some of the reasons why we care about alignment. we'll let you kick around those yourself. So, you say, well, Rich, that sounds interesting, that sounds great. There are a few challenges associated with it. Well, there are a few challenges to everybody in this process. Anybody ever tried to change the direction of the USS University? Right? It's a challenge. Changing the course of the battleship doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a group of dedicated people, and it doesn't have to change everything. Just think about how you can change some things on the margin to get it moving. So, for the business community, what does a degree mean? It used to be when you came out with a credential, my undergraduate in economics, it meant something. Well, maybe it didn't mean that much, but it was a shorthand, right? Because the employers that hired economics graduates, they knew what they were getting. Today, not really sure. Everybody's offering a little bit of something. So the degree no longer is an absolute proxy for applicant skills and capabilities. Real world. In the real world, what's really interesting is that in this labor shortage environment we've been describing, business has lots of different ways to meet their labor needs. And it doesn't always mean hiring more people, all right? It could be automation, it could be contract workers, it could be other business relationships. So even when the labor market gets tight, a new hire imperative is irresistible. Number 3, business has no idea what they really want, right? If you go to ask, what do you really need? They go, well, I need, I need somebody with 5 years experience in this particular field. It'd be nice if they had superpowers and 5 Olympic gold medals and other kinds of random stuff. When you read job postings, anybody sit around on Saturday nights and read online job postings? But I have no real nerds in the room here. All right. Okay, so I'm the only one. All right, so when you read these job postings, what are they? Most of them are promotions for the company, rather than the company truly understanding what they're looking for in their candidate. So the job postings themselves are often very imprecise reflections of what the company even says what they need. What do they need? They need what they need, when they want it, at the price that they want to pay. How does that work for us? Yeah, not so much. So that's a friction. And the last but not least, in many cases, business has no idea where to initiate a collaboration. Let's say I'm a business person. Man, I heard that Tarleton has some great programs and their graduates are fantastic. I need to talk to them. Well, where do I go? I know they got a list of stuff in the directory, but who's responsible for helping me set that up? Now, I understand we have somebody. There you are. We have somebody that does that, right? But she's out doing recruiting to people that have found her. More importantly, she's trying to find them. But wouldn't it be great if you had a point of contact where those people that do want to work with you, they had a place that they could go directly. So those are friction. For the students don't always see the need. Don't always see that it's not always obvious that the time and cost commitments are going to result in some kind of a post-exit investment earnings gains. How many of you read an article lately, probably the last 5 years, that said, is a college degree really worth it? Well, that's beating hell out of us, right? Because I think we all agree that a college degree is worth it. The question is, there's a lot of stuff that's saying, for example, associate's degrees are the new masters, right? Employers are looking for people that know how to do stuff. Well, what do you teach them? Are you teaching them how to do stuff? Students are kind of getting a mixed message here. Students don't know any better. They don't get any, they don't get any guidance and counseling along the way. They didn't get it in high school. Most of them have no formal way to be able to understand or articulate their passion and their design. They assume that the university is doing that for them, and the university has their best economic interests at heart. But we just saw from mission statement of the University of Texas, that's not true. I know it's a little more true here, because by the way, ever since I knew I was going to come here, I've been at a couple of different events and run into some of your student recruiters that are in various events. And I want you to know, these speak very highly of your institution, right? So just passing that on, just in case everyone needs some information. But they just assume that you're taking care of their economic interests. They don't really know what's going on. And last but not least, they certainly feel powerless and fearful to speak up and say, hey, are you really teaching me the right stuff here, right? For you, it's kind of a different story. There are some of you for which you don't see anything broken, right? Works, seems to work, it's always worked. Nothing's really changed enough for me to have to do anything different, right? It's an interesting proposition, doesn't feel terribly broken. What is the role of the university? Is there any kind of labor market alignment that should be a part of the role of the university? Are we making all of our students more erudite citizens, all of our students more erudite citizens? And that's good, that's our role, that's our job, right? It's not me per se, that's for you to think about what that means to you, the extent to which the role of the university has any kind of market-related kind of stuff. Innovation suffocation. I know this doesn't happen. But some administrations and some colleges have rigid policies and procedures that seem to dominate the instruction side of the house. Sure, that doesn't happen anywhere here, but it just kind of makes you say, I'm not going to beat my head against the wall with this. And last but not least, this guy, Ryan Craig, refers to this as prestige myopia. I'm not sure I really like it. Let this term in. It's preservation of the education caste system at all costs. Presumes current university design will always be the exclusive supplier of talent. Let me ask you this question. Is the university system in 2019 the only provider of educated talent in the United States? And the answer is no. Increasingly, you have competition from private vendors, from community technical college vendors, from self-learners, from a lot of different MOOCs online kind of thing. You have a lot of different competition. You are still part of the preeminent solution, but you are no longer the only solution. And it becomes interesting to say how much of that solution you want to be. Now, I got three major things. Number one, I checked. Shared and common skill language and framework, determining a process for translating occupational demand and labor market priorities. Let me ask you a quick question. If I were to ask you to give me a list in your favorite courses, upper-graduate courses, of all the learning objectives that you're teaching, can you give me that list? Can you give me a list? Just think about it yourself. I don't need to see the answer. But when we start thinking about it, can you say, for all of your upper-graduate courses, you'd be able to say, upper-class courses, you'd be able to say, here are the list of the 20 learning objectives that I expect my students to master, and then instruction will be geared towards. Kind of don't know whether we're going to be aligned or not, and we can't first articulate, do we know? So the first step in any alignment will be to say, hey, what are we teaching? We know we're teaching. We know we're teaching good stuff. Have we articulated? Can we tell the students? This is where things start getting really nasty. Have we told the students what we've told them and how to articulate that to an employer? Right? You've taught them all kinds of really good stuff. Can they turn around and say, hey, I learned lots of really good stuff, Mr. and Mrs. Employer. Right? Let me tell you what I learned how to do, regardless of where I learned it. Let me tell you my skills because they told me what I was learning. Then I learned it and I can articulate it. Does that happen today? The interesting thing is it doesn't happen enough. So let's think about what a skill really is. I'm going to give you an example. Many of you may have been in one of these meetings. I know because I came out of the workforce system. I spent a lot of time in these meetings. Okay, I'll start with my weekly progress report. It's London. On my right will act as acronym and jargon translator. Ever been in a meeting where you got educators, workforce people, legislators, maybe some business people? You all start talking, and the word skills comes up. Is there any chance that when an educator and a workforce system and an employer use the word skills, that they're talking about the same construct, much less the same skill? And the answer is, not so much. That becomes a real challenge because the business community says, hey, we need these skills. And the education community say, hey, this is what we teach. And they're using the word skills. And what are they doing? Talking right past each other. Right? So starting with a common shared skills language is one place to kind of start that process. Let me give you a good example. I was in DC about a month ago, and I walked into the Association of Professional Engineers building. Don't ask me why. It was really cool architecture. I just wandered into it. And I saw a job title. And the job title at the receptionist desk said Manager of First Impressions. Manager of First Impressions. Right? Cool. Who was it? It was the receptionist. Very nice lady. Knew all about her organization. Very nice customer service, interface, and the like. And so I started talking to her. And she said, well, what is one of the most important skills that you need to get this job? And she said, I smile a lot. And I said, well, I can tell that you do. You smile a lot. That's wonderful. Says, smiling is a skill. Her jovial nature, her ability to smile on a regular basis in the face of challenging people is a skill. Now, if I were to ask you whether smiling was a skill, what would you say? The answer is, well, that's of course lucky. Everybody smiles. Right? Well, for that particular job, that's a skill. We're going to talk a little bit here about soft skills, how important they are in the process. It's a really big thing in the business community these days. Hopefully, your students are getting not only in their upper-graduate classes, but throughout the gen ed curriculum. Right? We're trying to enhance the employability of our students, whether they make it all the way through or not. Right? thing, getting common skills language. So, in the labor market, there's a lot of different occupations. And by the way, there are individual jobs within occupations that might have slightly divergent skills. Where it says DWA, it's a term that says detailed work activity. It's a way that classifies work relative to things that are happening. What this says is there are some transferability of skills. I would guarantee you that there are some skills, vis-a-vis learning objectives for you all in the faculty level, we always say that are taught in the business school, that are taught in the engineering school, that are taught in the humanities school, that are transferable across all of them. But there is a common language that can be used to communicate that, and with the business community. And I can argue that that's what they would look like. And wouldn't it be nice if it had a syntax that sort of looked like that, where there was an action, a modifier, an object, statement modifier, so analyze engineering problems in electronics, that a skill that's reflective of the labor market actually has roughly the same syntax as a learning objective would in looking at and putting together a syllabus, right? So having a common skills language. Why do we care about this? Because this is what we're really trying to do here. Rather than doing this stuff where programs that report program titles are reported to the feds or whomever, and occupations and occupational titles, where that's the analysis, and what happens in that? Humanities programs show no real relationship to too many occupations, but are there lots of really important skills that are learned in the course of a sociology degree that have practical applications? Absolutely there is. So we're trying to move the conversation from that level down to the skill level, okay? Learning objectives, respective DWA skills. So, that's the common and shared skill language. Now, when I say skills, this comes back to this whole issue of soft skills. Maybe some of you know this person. Of course, I have good people skills. Stupid question is that. And how many of you would say you don't have good people skills? How many of you say you don't have good? You didn't just raise your hand, did you? That's the first time I've ever had anybody raise their hand. I want to talk to you afterwards about your very bad soft skills. How many would say you don't have good soft skills? Nobody. You're all kind of above. It's kind of like a Garrison Keeler, right? All of our students are above average, right? We all have soft skills. But do we really? And do we really know what they are? And do we know which ones are valued? This is what our kids think. What's your strongest skill? Well, I have excellent communication skills because I can tap them out in social media. That is not what we're trying to describe here. We're trying to look at things. Everybody kind of has a different way of thinking about soft skills. I like to distill them down into these. Essentially, can you be personable and communicative? Number one on the list of soft skills, almost every employer survey, is communication skills. By the way, followed by what they call an executive decision skill, which is conscientiousness. Conscientiousness. Do you do what you say you are going to do? Conscientiousness. Don't be a drama queen or a game player. Can you get along with other people? Show some intellectual curiosity. Show some intellectual curiosity. I know it doesn't happen in Tarleton. But I've been some places where the faculty talk about their students and say, these kids got no intellectual curiosity at all. You got to spoon feed them everything. They're just not interested in anything. Well, the business community is looking for people that don't have they're not finely baked, but they have enough intellectual curiosity to learn the kinds of things that they're going to need for the next assignment, their next job, their next promotion, and their success. Contributing to a positive work environment, the ability to develop rapport with clients and colleagues, interpersonal skills, have and use common sense. All right, if you're thinking the bar is getting lower and lower here, kind of is. Be a Socratic thinker. All right, isn't that what we want all of our students to be able to say, hey, let's question this and let's come up with some conclusions. We say critical thinking. How many of you teach critical thinking? How many of you think you teach critical thinking, whether you use the words or not, to any of your students written down anywhere? But everybody has raised their hands. If they didn't, it's just because their arm is tired. Right? So here's the deal. Where in your syllabus, or your list of learning objectives, or in your mode of instruction, do you lay out how you are teaching critical skills? Now, I can tell you those that are in STEM disciplines, teach critical thinking skills through rigorous and scientific investigative properties, the ability to induce and deduce. There is a scientific process that's wrapped around it. That's a way, that is critical thinking. That is teaching a format of critical thinking. Do you know why employers like a lot of STEM graduates? Doesn't really have anything to do with the discipline. There are a lot of low-earning biology majors and other STEM graduates who don't really make a lot of money. Do you know what's really attractive about STEM graduates? They have been trained in the scientific thought method. When you say scientific thought to a STEM graduate, it means that they have been imbued with the ability to think critically, to do inductive and deductive reasoning. That is part of critical thinking. So I asked you, you're all teaching critical thinking skills. To what extent have you explained it to your students? So that they can turn around and say, you betcha I got critical thinking skills. Let me talk about that. I can do this, that, this is how I was taught, this is how I understand, this is how I problem solve. We're talking about two things, critical thinking skills and problem solving things. Both skills you have heard over and over are in demand by the labor market. We're teaching it, but are we articulating how we're teaching it? Are we even thinking about how we're teaching it? And are we articulating it in a way that our students can regurgitate it? And last but not least, care about your appearance and be clean. I know you wouldn't think that this is that, we do that, but it's the damnedest thing. I was doing some work with the Waco Workforce Board. Got a Waco campus now. The Workforce Board, they're pretty active in that area. And we did a couple of referrals to a local chicken processing plant. Now, obviously, we're not talking about the sharpest of tools here, but it was a job, it's a high-paying job. Sent those people. Employer called back the next day, said, don't send me any more people. Well, why not? Those people have work history. They showed up in pajama bottoms and flip-flops. Okay? Now, I know you're instruction over at the University of Texas. I looked up at the student body, and I swear they look, they just rolled out of bed. I'm sure that doesn't happen in here. Right? Different missions. But I'm telling you what, this be clean, care about your appearance, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have, kind of thing. It's more important than we think. Okay. When we start talking about the soft skills, here's the most important part to me. It's not just getting a job, the first job. If you want any kind of upward career or wage mobility, almost every metric of can I promote this person is related to what? That person's soft skills. Google, perfect example. They have a 13-question system on what qualifies them to be a good manager. Of the 13 questions, only one relates to their hard skills. The other 12 relate to what? What we would call soft skills, workplace essential skills, communication, feedback, coaching, teamwork, respect, consideration. Those are the things that we try to teach along the way. Now, that's really cool. What is that? Anybody recognize that font? You would have translated one of my fonts. I know what it is. Is that a tag? So, this is understanding the labor market, all right? This is understanding the labor market. So, understanding what your geographic area is and what your labor market is your students will be going into. So, there's a couple of things related to that. We're talking about understanding where your students go, because where they're going and where they'll be working sort of tells us what kind of occupational demand there'll be. 2, using labor market criteria to identify what you want to teach. So are you going to focus on areas where the occupation is not only in demand, but they have other high wage criteria and the like. And number 3 is to create a process that is consistent and replicable that includes, when you say, is there any demand, it means, is there objective statistical data? You have local, what we call stakeholder wisdom or input about any demand and employer engagement. And it looks like this. It's a typical 3-legged stool thing, right? So you're talking about 3 ways to decide what you should offer in a university environment. Labor market information. What do the data tell us? What demand do we see? What's the occupational demand in the data? 2, what does the business community say? What are they saying they need from us? What are our other stakeholders in the community saying to us? And this one is just as important. Are we getting that continuous feedback loop? What are the labor market outcomes? What do our student outcomes tell us? If all of our students are leaving and they're going out and they're getting $10 an hour jobs, what's wrong? Well, they're either very poor interviewers, the labor market is really, really bad, or they really don't have any skills that they can use to compete for higher paying jobs. So being able to look at that labor market outcomes, and by the way, and I'm going to say this, but I don't know whether I have any humanities or the large people, is that one of the things about looking at the world through skills, I think I may have said this earlier, is that programs like sociology and political science that are teaching really good stuff, but not really occupation related, if we think about them from a skill standpoint and they're experiencing outstanding labor market outcomes, not only student interest, but the students that graduate from programs are doing well in the economy, that's an accountability metric. That's a positive metric. Not every evaluation metric has to be occupation related or occupation driven, all right? But everybody has to have some kind of accountability. By the way, for those who are involved in the accreditation process, SACs and all the rest of that stuff, anybody who's involved in accreditation knows that labor market student outcomes now are increasing part of that process, okay? I went ahead and made an assumption. And if I have made an incorrect assumption, which I may even have, is that when I started looking at the labor market area for your 3 campuses, I looked at a 100-mile radius of Stephenville, because everybody knows a mile in West Texas is different than a mile in the Metroplex, right? So, 100-mile radius of Stephenville, a 60-mile radius of Fort Worth, and a 60-mile radius of Waco. So those concentric circles is what I'm calling the Stephenville labor market. I'm calling the Tarleton labor market as a whole. So, first part, when I look at student recruiting and where your students were coming from just here, and I look at that at the number of 15 to 19-year-olds in that 100-mile radius of just Weatherford, just a little bit up north and east here. If I look at that, look at the population projection between 2017 and 2027. It's an absolute change, and where the vast majority of that population is coming from. And more importantly, where historically you have been able to draw students that have a declining population in the student age population. So the demographics, when we start talking about where you see most of your student enrollment and growth coming in closer to the Tarrant County campus, why is that? Because most of the growth is going to come where most of the kids are, right? Now, real quick about the economy. Almost every job, every industry sector in the economy is growing with the population. Something like 80% of all the jobs in the state of Texas are in what we call population-serving industries. So as the population grows, you get growth in those industries. 2 major exceptions. One is the oil and gas sector. That's that big neon thing. And we all know people make a lot of money and then got the legs cut right out from under them. Very cyclical industry. And the second one is manufacturing. Manufacturing has been really stagnant from an employment standpoint. Output productivity way up out of it. I'll talk about that in a minute. Here are the industries where we've seen in Texas above average growth, both on a percentage basis and on an absolute basis. AWW is average weekly wage. Anything interesting in that list? I'm going to foreshadow this, and where you're going to see most of the industry and occupational growth is actually in 4 major areas. 4 major areas. One is going to be in healthcare related things. One is going to be in essentially computer science related stuff. 3 is going to be in business and financial support service related stuff, and 4 is going to be in sales related things. There's the industries. By the way, the reason why you see industries, you go, well, which I don't care about industries. Why do I care about industries? Well, when you see growth in the special trade contractors, for this is an example, special trade contractors, employment growth there, 24,000 in the last 2-year period. What does that mean occupationally? Well, if you're going to operate a special trade contractor, if you're going to be in the construction business, what kind of skill sets do you need? Every industry has a unique set of occupations. So if that's the industry that's growing, these are the kinds of occupations that would show up as being in demand. So if you see growing, if you've got ambulatory healthcare, if you've got agricultural supply services, every industry has a list of occupations that are related to it. If it's increasing, you're going to have demand in those occupations. If it's decreasing, you're going to have likely layoffs in those. Now, we talk real quickly. I showed you that oil and gas thing, oil and gas sector. Notice that on this chart, you're talking about employment, and then you're talking about output. And notice the divergence starting here about 2015, where output and employment with a little lag kind of mirror each other. And all of a sudden, we're starting to see output really go up, while employment has gone up just very slightly. That's a big drop. We know what's going on there? You know all that fracking stuff that we have going on? Those very long horizontal drilling rigs, you get an awful lot of output these days with fewer rigs and fewer people on the pad. So you get tremendous productivity output. This is what you know it to be in manufacturing. Many of you have seen this forever. Output up, fewer people, right? Output per person way up. Those are changes in technology influencing that labor market. Oh, and by the way, every time that happens, what are you doing? You're changing the skill sets in demand. They look like this. They're starting to look more and more jobs like this. This is why when you have silos in an educational institution, we're all guilty of this in some way, shape, or form. They say, you know, the career service people want to talk to academic people, and the engineering people don't necessarily talk to humanities people. But really, when we look at the labor market and preparing a student, we are student-focused. The jobs they see have skills that are crossing a lot of different departments and functions. So if we are actually preparing students for jobs that are in demand, this one happens to be real energy manager, what you see is we're picking up parts of occupations and skills that cross a lot of our different programs. Once we start thinking about skills and transferable skills, hopefully what that means is some of the walls between our departments start to fall down as well. And here's a bunch of occupations. There are at least 10 job openings online for each one of these occupational titles. How many of you are providing appropriate education instruction to prepare workers for any of these jobs? I will guarantee you that you're doing an awful lot related to it. What you don't recognize? You don't recognize these job titles. Because these job titles are changing so frequently, it's almost impossible to keep up within our process if we're talking about if we're talking about occupational titles. Anybody curious about anything? No? Anybody want to be a drone pilot? You know, drones. Are we teaching drones? In agriculture? What discipline are you in?
I'm an ag communication. I teach for video production purposes.
Perfect. A good friend of mine is selling his house. His real estate agent. Now, the first thing she did, she came in with this little bitty drone, started taking the video, it all around the house, and then they have about 5 acres. Took it all over the property, took a picture. Agriculture. Are drones becoming a bigger part of what agriculture means? Right? Absolutely. Those are skills, but by the way, you might teach them in agriculture, but they have other applications in other departments along the way. Why? Because the key elements of being a drone pilot is a skill regardless of an academic discipline. Here are my forays of emerging technology. These are happening. You'll see all of these. Automations reflecting logistics, creating unmediated customer interaction. You know, there's no people involved in the process. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, all that big data stuff. And the one that's most important, relates back to soft skills, is the adaptability. If you don't know how to use your soft skills to apply the technology to the problem, then you have somebody that has empty knowledge, right? So when we start talking about STEM, I never talk about STEM. I talk about STEAM, and my STEAM is not arts. It is applied science. It is applied technology, applied engineering, and applied mathematics. Because when employers tell us what are they looking for, it's solving problems, critical. Okay. Occupations growing the fastest between 2017 and 2027. Anything interesting about this list? Consistent theme. What you see is growing fastest percentage basis. AAO is annual average openings. Healthcare. One that I really like that's on this list that has not been on this list in the last 10 years and just crept up in the last couple of years is number 4, statisticians. Why does anybody care about statistics and having somebody that understands statistics? Because from a artificial intelligence, from a public policy, the math that most of us use is what? Statistics. By the way, that is a skill. Master of statistics is crosses off every discipline that we have. Here are the job postings, online job postings. As of this month, occupational titles, you see a lot of the same things. Same things when we get to fast. All right. Here's the projected occupational demand for the 36 county area. 36 county area. It's that 100-mile radius around Stephenville. This is what they look like. Anything interesting about this? What is the largest industry, largest employer in that area? It's going to be education. In almost every rural area, the #1 employers in rural areas are local ISD, local power company, and the largest Walmart, Kmart, the largest retail establishment. Every retail area. But when you're not doing that, because these are only 4 occupations that require an associate's degree or more, what else do you see? Finance, business operations, application software development. That's a 1 through 11. Here's 12 through 13. Anything interesting about this list? Think about the core skills, whether these mean anything to you at all. Think about the core skills underneath each one of those. And ask yourself, am I getting to any of the skill requirements for any of these occupations in my particular program area? Am I hitting any of the core skills that would help my students have a leg up on any of these? When I look at Fort Worth, that same 60-mile radius of Fort Worth, your Fort Worth campus, it's a big 14-county area. Again, higher ed only. Here's the top 15. Anything interesting about that? Because at some point in time, you guys are probably going to say, okay, we're thinking about expanding our Tarrant County campus. We're thinking about expanding our Waco campus. We're thinking about expanding our Midlothian campus. Well, what should we put out there? Should we put out there things that are convenient for us, or things that are related to the demand of the students that are going to be coming into that? And shouldn't we at least kind of have a sense of the labor market where this campus sits? Anything interesting about this? Do you see a theme through here? There are some technical skills, whether they're on the business side, whether they're on the ICT side, that can be taught in almost every discipline and are indeed found in almost every discipline. The things I like to say is IT skills is not a major, it's not an industry, it is not an occupation, it is a set of ubiquitous talents that cross almost every occupational area in almost every industry. And you see them here, as well as a lot of technical business skills. This one looks like a Waco. You know what you see in Waco? A lot of what I call ubiquitous skills, which are sort of in occupations that are found in almost every industry across the board. I want to go on to let you see this. All right, number 3. Now that's the evaluation side, right? Doing the comparison side. Conduct review of existing programs against occupational demand. Look at what you're teaching and say, hey, here's some things where we're really strong, we're teaching all the right stuff here. Here's some things that seem like they're in demand, may not be a part of our curriculum. Or here's some things that we're teaching that don't show up as being in demand. Are they superfluous, or are we on the leading edge of teaching some new stuff? We need to figure this out. That way to do that is to start trying to throw them together. So when you start also talking about what you should be teaching, another thing maybe to think about in the process is, okay, what are the articulation opportunities with regional community colleges? Think about Tarrant, think about Waco, you can think about Midlothian, think about what are we getting to your kids, and what can we do to leverage what they've already learned, and where should we pick them up? And then also the same thing with high school. TEA is completely revising their program to study approach, so you're getting kids that are coming out with 2 and 3 courses in a program of study that can be leveraged and articulated both in secondary, but some directly into post-secondary, right? So what are the high schools teaching, and are we giving them opportunity for those high school students to carry those interests, those program study interests into our program? Okay. This is what this means. What we're asking with articulation is to be able to say, can you think outside in, not inside out? The University of Texas, from a student standpoint, is doing what? We are teaching them what we think they should know. I'm going to beat them up only because I'm an alumni and I'm not there. Because I know that doesn't happen anywhere else. But what we're talking about with alignment is to be able to say, think outside in, look at the labor market and see how responsive we are. And then find a way to teach them that. Focus not on what you want to teach them, but what they need to know if the goal is enhanced employability. And by the way, I said this early on, higher ed alignment does not have to be an either-or proposition. It's geared towards, i.e. proposition, geared towards vocational pursuits, being a slave to business. Anybody, trying to put a little vocational, side of your programs, go, you're just a slave to business. But there's a fine line between providing employability skills and providing academic exposure and enlightenment simply for the sake of erudition. I love the united souls. They are lovely to have a conversation, 2 tequilas at the minimum. But what we want them to do is be able to pay. So, when I look at your completers, and we look at the programs that you're offering, and whether there is one or more direct occupations related to them, this is what it kind of looks like. So where it says direct relationship, that means for this program, there's at least one occupation where there's a direct linkage between what's learned and the skills that are necessary to practice in that occupation. The direct relationship advanced degree says, yes, there's a direct relationship, but you're going to have to get a graduate degree to get there. Perfect example, psychology. Right? Psychology student, do you become an undergraduate degree to become a psychologist? The answer is no. It requires a graduate degree. Is there a direct relationship between psychology and being a psychologist? Absolutely there is. Right? So that's another relationship. Then close means you're not directly related, but you have a lot of the same related skills. And last, you were teaching some stuff. There's not really, it doesn't mean teaching bad stuff. It just means there's not really a really strong occupational linkage to what you're teaching. So this is how it plays out when I use that construct for your graduates. So let's see what we got. We got 8.7% in an undefined relationship advanced degree. That's 19, so that's 20%. So that means 80% of what you're already teaching has at least direct or close relationships to one or more occupations. By the way, that's really good, right? I've done this work with a lot of different places. Actually started with the Pennsylvania higher education system, and their numbers have been, it's Slippery Rock and Schulenburg State, all those institutions over there around Pennsylvania. When you look at theirs, their percentage of undefined relationships are in the 40%. That's a lot of graduates that are sort of in liberal arts, humanities, undefined, 4-digit zip code kind of thing. Trust me, not a lot of occupational relationships. So this is pretty darn good, all things being equal. This worries me only a little bit, because one of the things that we want to see here is we want our students, when they leave, we want them to be able to be in the higher earning brackets than the lower earning brackets. So what you see here is this is some work for services people put together in terms of looking at Amanda. So we're looking at by bins here, by quintile. So we're looking at the blue is outcomes. This is what post-exit alumni survey. Earnings, what bin they're in, and then all the occupations that are in Texas and the percentage of employment that's in those. Now, what we see here is that it's pretty good. The blue, where the blue is stronger than the red, that's one of our goals. A lot of that shows up in the 30 to 40K and between 50 to 60K. We get down here on some of the higher end, the 100K kinds of things. That's a lot of master's and PhD programs, professional degree programs. Probably wouldn't affect you anyway, so it's probably not a big deal. So all that's not too bad. Down there, that lower scale is what bothers me the most. The percentage of students that are earning 1 year post-exit or 6 months post-exit, the less than what the average, the number of students that are in that. So the number of low-paying students that haven't found their way yet in the labor market and found their way in upwards earnings ladder. And that's what we're trying to do, reduce that random walk, improve that ability. It's a process of being able to find out what business needs, finding out what you do, bringing it together through relevant work experience, core academic learning. A lot of that gets in some gray area. We're creating skilled talent pool, but we're not the only ones that care about this. TEA, the Coordinating Board, the Workforce Commission are all involved in some degree of looking at improving labor market alignment. And it's really simple, all things being equal. If you look at this on 2 dimensions, in terms of curricular content, out there in learning objectives versus appropriate course content, and then labor market alignment, which are programs that are strongly related to labor market need, and those that are poorly labor market need. This is what we're trying to do. Doesn't do us any good to be teaching the right program with labor market demand, but teaching the wrong skill sets, right? Or outdated stuff. It doesn't do us any good to teach stuff that is not related to the labor market anyway, and we're teaching it badly. Unrelated. That's the worst part. It also doesn't help us be able to have great content for obsolete jobs. We don't want to be known as an institution that produces the best buggy whip makers in Texas, right? Unless we are the only buggy whip maker program in the state, in which case maybe that's a different story. All right. This is all we want to do. We want to get closer and closer to more of our program offerings being in this bracket here. The program is more responsive, the content is academically rigorous, and is relevant to business expectations. So at the core of alignment, all we're really talking about is this. What are we doing to get more and more of what we're offering up here in this box? It's as simple as that. It's a long-term process. It's not a big change. You're not turning the USS University around on a dime. We're just saying, hey, we are in favor of increased market responsiveness, both in terms of content and in terms of employability. All right? So with that, let me introduce one really quick tool. Somebody that's doing that group called Skills Engine, and I do some work with it. So they carried on a lot of work I was doing with the Workforce Commission in terms of detailed work activity analysis. They will give you the ability to essentially do this, to look at occupations, to be able to go out and do online validated employer validations of those skills, and then look at what you're already teaching and give you an instant printout. They'll say, hey, you say you're going to be teaching these occupations, here's the skills in demand, this is what you say you're teaching, we're going to communicate those in a common shared skill language, and then we're going to see, those that are right on, those that are different, and when they're different, should we add it to the curriculum, or should we take it away? So there are people that are down. There's a tool that's called Calibrate. The Skills Engine people are putting together. It's a spin-off from the former Texas State College folks. I've been at this 40 years. It's the most interesting thing I've ever seen to look at alignment without taking a whole lot of time, effort, and energy. So it's actually kind of cool. And if you were to click on that video right there, I'm not sure I can do it. Oh, you're better. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So with that, this is the last thing. If we're going to do alignment and we're going to care about the labor market, then we need to start thinking about curriculum development in a slightly different way, and it's something that we would call backward design. Everybody know about backward design, curriculum kind of development process? So this is nothing new. Anybody read this book, by the way, Executive Curriculum by Froeschle? In 1929, there was a huge ruckus in the United States about what are we teaching at university, and are we teaching the right stuff? And this Froeschle guy wrote this allegory about the caveman days, and as the millennials changed and the glaciers fell off and all the rest of that stuff, cavemen started having to learn new things for survival. Well, guess what? Your kids are having to do new things for survival. That labor market is changing around them. So this backward design is simply saying it's especially for learners what is expected of during lessons, at the end of the unit what they're supposed to master, and it's in relation to which labor market skill requirements we're trying to do. So it kind of looks like this. Education is fantastic. More education is more fantastic. It's got to be relevant to the times. It's got to be relevant skills demand. Education must be purpose-driven, not allowed to get lost in the red tape. You need the flexibility, the responsibility to be able to teach the right stuff to your kids. And last but not least, for those that never really get any exposure to the outside world and or in the curriculum development process, you have the right and the responsibility of the institution to invest in their teachers, in the faculty, to be able to do some of this kind of stuff. This is not what most of you ever signed on for in the process. So that's what backward design helps you. So with that, I hope I gave you a little something to think about in terms of labor market alignment. Again, I just put some stuff on the table. That's the pinata. Grab the sticks, do whatever you want. There's a lot of candy in there if you whack it right. Right? So that's all I can take. So thank you very much. I'm happy to engage in any conversation you might like to have.
So if you wouldn't mind, a question or a comment, as opposed to
Anybody? Go.
So I'm in the College of Business, and I teach in the CIS Computer Information Systems Department.
Really wrong stuff.
Yes. So after the Y2K.com bust in the 2000s, our enrollments decreased about 50% nationwide. We haven't seen a huge increase over the last 18 years, some moderate. And yet, we hear that IT is an ubiquitous skill. It's certainly one of the highest paying items that were on the slides. I remember in around 2000 seeing on the front page of the Dallas Morning News a guy holding a cardboard sign, need work, IT professional, certification, certification, certification. So there was an idea, I think, among parents that there were no jobs in computers anymore, which just fed into our decrease in enrollments. So have you seen or have an idea of, I would think the CIS, CS programs would be some of the largest programs in universities because of what you shared today, and yet we don't realize that oftentimes at the regional universities. So do you have some insight into that issue?
I do. Thank you. Excellent question. I concur with all your facts set. And what has happened since? I'm going to take sort of the first 5 or 8 years after the .com bust as a shakeout period as a whole, is that people are starting to realize that in a digital economy, digital skills are critical. And they're showing up not in a silo, that's a computer science, but those skills, database management skills, other digital related skills, are being diffused across a lot of different departments. So rather than scary, I'm going to be a computer science major and just stick my head in the computer science bucket all day long, which really scares women in particular. Don't want to do that in everything that they think is computer science. They'd rather pick up their computer science coursework over in sociology or some other place. So you actually, if you break down the courses that are being taken, not in computer science as a major, but the coursework across the way is being diffused or distributed across a lot of different people. That goes back to that issue about the ubiquitous nature of the skills. Now, I'm not sure what question we want to solve, or what part of that problem we want to solve. Do we want to build our computer science department and build that as a foundation of the college and say, hey, we have the best computer science department, or do we want to go with that trend and make sure that our computer science department, we have some majors who are concentrating in that, but what we do is we support a whole host of people learning digital skills across every other discipline. Ways to think about the world. I think what you're seeing from an enrollment course standpoint, you're seeing a lot of the latter rather than. Does that make any sense? It absolutely does not make it any less important. It just means where it's focused. It's no longer this, this isolated curricular science person. It's really, so you were essentially successful. Scared a bunch of people away. It's kind of like engineering, right? Engineering with all those washout classes, right? Everybody's probably looked at the difference between student intent and what their first year enrollment is and what they graduated seamless data. You guys done that? Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing those that especially the data that I've seen are the difference between STEM and non-STEM majors. So when you look at enrollments in STEM majors, for the initiating class or the professional class, they're really high. They're like in the 60 or 70 percentile. And then by the time they get to the graduation, they go, the engineering class, I got weeded out when I was a second semester freshman. And then computer science, so that's just scary all the time. I don't want to be somebody that's sitting around and socialization. So what happens in population? And so, I can't major in hormones and beer and computer science. I mean, something's got to go. So what do we do? I think this emphasis on applied STEM, especially in computer science skill sets, across most of the is what you're seeing mostly is with the large college too. And find the relevance is they're taking those skills, putting them across their curriculum. It's probably the right answer. doesn't bode well for the head of the computer science unless he or she wants to take that back and says, this is what we're doing. We're not here to build a site. We're here to make our students more digitally literate, regardless of their age. Great question. Anybody else? How many of you think everything that you're teaching is already perfectly aligned with where you think your students are going? How many of you know where your students are going? You know where your students are going? You have ongoing relationships with your students, or are you doing it through the follow-up kind of related stuff? Both, a little bit both. And you're getting feedback, you get good feedback about related things? Exactly what they're doing, and how many have gone on, and what happens to the other half? That is, we don't. Maybe. So here's the other interesting thing: is that in gen ed kind of things, is it what is our? Do you know what our graduation rate is? 6-year graduation rate. 6-year graduation rate, around 50%, probably high 40s, 50%, right? So we got a lot of kids that are with us for a while, and they don't that way for whatever reason, right? So they're out. So one of the things that we start talking about with improved alignment and thinking about the world from a skill standpoint is, are we giving them some employability skills along the way? Maybe they don't make the nurse program, but maybe they get a way to step into the and start them on a career progression. Are we helping them think through that process? Because we're thinking about, well, you washed out relative to being able to get all the way through a nursing program, but you picked up enough basic skills, you got basic compassion. If we start you and apply with CNA, and you get into the work environment, you may thrive. Just wasn't in this particular academic environment. We've got a lot of kids that are leaving us in a first and second year. I have to admit that I'm a really strong proponent. I'm going to pull along to this, and she can give me again. Is that I'm a real strong proponent of reverse matriculation. We get a lot of kids that come in and they're here, they don't belong here. I'm not going to make any value judgments other than the fact that we know that there are some of those students. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a conversation with them along the way and say, you know what? There are some alternate programs where you can help fulfill your passions and your needs. Maybe if you move to a community technical college and pick up some skills, and you might do better there, and you might come back to us. You might find more of who you are, come back, and now we've got you as an upgrade. But in the meantime, we're going to send you down there to learn how to do something, get you some technical skills and certification. You'll be able to make a living, support your family. And by the way, if you do well, or as you think about your career progression, you might be back with us. A lot of universities really don't like to do that. But when we think about education as a whole, and we think about student-focused education, kind of an interesting concept. Because we know that not all the kids that walk our door really have the chops to be here, regardless of the. All right, great question. What else? What else? Okay. No.
With all of the quits, with reference to the quits, the increase in quits over the last few years with the strong economy, how does that change the market for a student who's graduated? How does that change their search now versus a market where there's not a lot of quits?
The quit rate is very interesting, but what it's tempered by is I said something about the frictions to employers about hiring imperative. That goes with the wage imperative too. Is it just because the quit rate is high, you would think that employers are starting to compete for the existing workers, and it should bid wages up. In fact, economists have been predicting that for like 9 of the last 5 years. Thinking that the labor market is tight enough that wages will be bid up. So not only will those students be able to get in entry-level jobs, even for which they may not be fully qualified, but they'll start dipping down into the labor pool, pulling them up, and then wage competition should be driving up wages, especially for the highest skilled workers. But one of the things that we're finding is that a lot of businesses are looking at alternate work arrangements and looking at technology labor substitution patterns and other things, so that it's really only been over the last 6 or 8 months that you've seen that rise, above average rise in wages, which is indicative of lot of wage competition kind of thing. The labor market is just now getting to the point where those wages are rising 3 and 4%, which economists thought should have been happening, 3-4 years ago. So it means that all of your students, I think I preface this, all of your students will be able to get jobs, even the dropouts, they'll be able to get jobs. They're starting as above average kids, with above average intellectual capacity. Hopefully they got a little bit, they were why they were here. The question is, in this emerging bimodal distribution of earnings, which is really true, unless you have a certificate in demand, credential in demand, degree, or put you on the other side of that digital divide, that high earnings, there's a lot of employment and not a lot of earnings to be made on the low side of that bifurcation. Does that make some sense? Does that make sense? All right. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice?